There's a particular kind of exhaustion, not one that comes from being too busy, but from carrying a decision you haven't made yet. You know the one. Maybe it's a career change you've been circling for 2 years, a relationship you're just not sure is right, a business that you keep almost starting, a city you've been thinking about moving to or leaving. And it's not that you haven't thought about it. You have. In fact, probably too much. You've made the pros and cons list. You've talked about it with people you trust. You've Googled it, and you even talked about it with ChatGPT. Maybe you've even prayed about it. And yet, here you still are. Today, I want to share with you 5 principles in making important and big decisions in a way that's going to help you make it with more clarity. They're drawn from a discernment approach from one of the biggest experts in this topic, Ignatius of Loyola. But don't worry, this isn't going to be a theological discussion. These are practical tools that work whether you're religious or not. I'm also using some of my own interpretation based upon the clients I've worked with in the past. And if you stay until the end, I'll share something with you called the Decision Clarity Scorecard, a quick diagnostic that helps you understand exactly why you're stuck. In case we haven't met, hi, my name is Cris Almanza, and I'm a career and purpose coach. I'm here to help people find more clarity and confidence in their purpose and live more intentionally. Let's get started. The hidden cost of staying stuck. Before we get started with the framework, I want to name something that doesn't get talked about often. Most people are afraid of making the wrong decision. It feels so permanent. But in my experience, the bigger problem isn't making the wrong decision. It's staying suspended between choices for months, years, even decades. Indecision isn't neutral. It comes with a very high cost. When a decision sits unresolved, it quietly drains your mental energy every single day. You revisit it in the shower. You replay it at 2 a.m. You run the same scenarios over and over. Not because you're making progress, but because the loop hasn't closed. I see this most often in people who are actually quite competent and capable. The very thing that makes them good at their work, the ability to see things from different angles, weigh consequences, think long term, becomes the very thing that traps them. So the goal here isn't certainty, it's clarity. And there is a real difference. Certainty says, I know exactly how this is going to turn out. Clarity says, I understand what matters most and I'm ready to move. That's what we're going for. Most people that get stuck are expecting this magical 100% certainty. But the most successful people are the ones that are able to act despite not having all the information, all of the context, and not having a lot of certainty. So let's start from the beginning, which is often not where most people think to start. Tip number 1, make sure you're deciding the right question. The first principle sounds almost too simple, but it trips people up constantly. This is something that I get to exercise a lot in my profession, and I work with many different businesses in this thing called design thinking. You need to make sure you're actually asking the right question. Most people come to a big decision as if it's binary, option A or option B, stay or go, say yes or say no, this job or that one. But often underneath that surface question, there's a deeper one that hasn't been named yet. I worked with someone once who was agonizing over 2 job offers. Same industry, similar pay. We spent about 20 minutes walking through the details until I finally asked, what do you want your life to look like in 5 years? He got quiet for a moment, and then he said, I think the real decision is whether or not I'm still willing to continue working evenings and weekends. That was the real decision. The job offers were almost beside the point. Ignatius called this naming the election, being precise about what we're actually choosing, because the clearer the question, the clearer the path. So first, make sure you're deciding the right thing. Now, once you have the right thing, here's what you need to pay attention to next. Tip 2, learn to read your inner response. The second principle is about paying attention to what happens inside you when thinking about the options. Ignatius described these 2 experiences as consolation and desolation. Consolation is where you feel a sense of energy, feeling connected with God, peace, rightness, even when the path ahead is hard. Desolation is more of an experience of heaviness, anxiety, a lack of peace. Now, you don't have to use his language, but I think most of us know the difference between this feels scary, but it also feels right, and This feels wrong in a way I just can't describe. The important thing is that you do not override this signal too quickly. A lot of people, when they feel resistance or anxiety about a decision, jump to the conclusion too quickly that it's just not the right one. But sometimes anxiety is the feeling of growth, of doing something that matters. Sometimes it's even misunderstood excitement. On the other hand, if a choice is consistently producing feelings of dread and hollowness, that's worth taking very seriously. Your inner response isn't the only data point, but it is real data. So notice your inner signals. They're telling you something. Tip number 3, borrow perspective from your future self. This is one of my favorite exercises because of how simple it is to do. Imagine yourself 5 years from now looking at this moment. Which choice would make you glad that you had the courage to make it? Notice that I said courage, not the choice that turned out perfectly. The one that you would be proud of, regardless of the outcome. Ignatius used an even longer lens. He invites you to consider looking back on the decision at the end of your life. From that vantage point, what would you have wished you had chosen? What's interesting about this exercise is how effectively it cuts through fear. When you're standing in the middle of a decision, the risks feel immediately enormous. But from a longer vantage point, you often see the risk of indecision, that staying stuck is going to come with real consequences. I have some people do this exercise and know immediately. Not everyone, but it happens often. Something about the distance really creates clarity. Borrow the perspective of your future self. Tip number 4, don't discern in isolation. One of the most common mistakes I see people running into in this situation is trying to do this decision alone. Now, I understand the instinct. These feel deeply personal. Sometimes you don't want to involve people who will overcomplicate things. I think that's the right intent. But here's the problem with total isolation. You're working with incomplete data. You have blind spots. We all do. You have fears that are distorting the way you view the options. You have assumptions that you've never examined because no one's pushed back on them with you. Talking to friends helps, to a point. Friends who care about you have their own feelings about your choice. They might want to protect you from a decision because they don't want to see you getting hurt. Or they might project their own unlived desires onto you. I think these reactions come out of love, but they will not be super helpful in every occasion. What's more helpful is someone who can engage with your thinking without being personally invested in the outcome. A mentor, a coach, a spiritual director, a trusted advisor, someone who will ask you the questions that you've been avoiding. Sometimes, when honest, structured conversation can unlock more clarity than months of solo deliberation. Don't do it alone. Tip number 5. At some point, you have to commit. Everything we've talked about to this point gets you to the right decision. Reading your inner signals, borrowing perspective, finding good counsel. All of it is in service of the final step. You have to actually decide. I know it sounds obvious, but I've seen people use discernment itself as a way to avoid making a decision. They keep gathering information, asking one more person, keep doing one more exercise. Talking about it, thinking about it, and even planning the thing is not doing the thing. And what's underneath that is often this false belief that if they think just long enough, they're going to get 100% certainty. Here's the hard truth. It's probably not coming. Ignatius believed that once you've engaged in this question honestly, openly, and paying attention to your inner life, you are able to make a choice and commit to it fully, not revisiting it constantly, not keeping one foot out the door. Because here's what I've seen over and over. Clarity often doesn't come before making a decision. It comes after. Once you've chosen, the path starts to reveal itself. You have to have the confidence that even if it wasn't the best decision, you are capable of redirecting, of adjusting the course, and handling the consequences. The willingness to move, even with uncertainty, is a core part of the discernment process. Why high performers get stuck. I want to tell you one more thing before I tell you about the scorecard. In my experience, some of the people who get stuck in these decisions for so long are often some of the most capable people in the room. They're intelligent. They mean and want to get it right. They can see a dozen possible futures. And that's precisely what makes this so hard for them. Their analytical strength, the very thing that helps them professionally, is the thing that's hurting them personally in this situation. What they're missing isn't more information or even more thinking. It's a structured process to move from deliberation to decision. That's what the Decision Clarity Scorecard is designed to help you with. It's a quick diagnostic with only a handful of questions that are going to help you understand why you're staying stuck. Questions like, have you been thinking about this for more than 6 months? Is it drawing on mental energy even when you're not actively thinking about it? Would you feel relief, not just anxiety, if the decision were finally made? The scorecard is not going to give you the answer, but it will show you clearly why you're getting stuck. It's usually not that complicated, but this is the first step. Decision coaching. The scorecard came out of something I created called the Strategic Clarity Intensive. It's a 90-minute session focused on making one important decision, and yes, it really can be done in one session. First, we'll identify the real question. We'll surface what's actually driving that hesitation, whether it's fear, unclear values, or something else. We will evaluate the trade-offs very clearly, and you will leave with a defined path forward. I've done these sessions with entrepreneurs, leaders, professionals at a crossroad. The most common outcome of this is leaving with more clarity. It's not because I told them what to do, but because having a structured space to think out loud with someone asking you the right questions makes all the difference. I only have a few slots a week. If you're interested, the link to learn more is below. And if the intensive isn't the right fit right now, I hope these 5 principles are useful on their own. Get clear on the real question. Pay attention to your inner response. Borrow perspective from your future self. Don't discern in isolation. And when you're ready, commit. Your life moves in the direction of your decisions. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is choose. I'm Cris Almanza, a career and purpose coach, and I wish you blessings and success.